Today I will be refuting Esmerelda Rivera's speech, which is that racial profiling continues in the Black community. Racial profiling, I may remind you, refers to the discriminatory practice by law enforcement officials targeting individuals for suspicion of crime based on the individual's race, ethnicity, religion, or natural origin. So even though this is a fairly strong claim, its credibility was diminished due to the lack of evidence and fallacious reasoning. Esmerelda's secondary claims are as follows. Her first claim is that racial profiling dehumanizes minorities. Second claim is that racial profiling has a negative impact on the youth. Her third and final claim is that racial profiling causes minorities distrust in the system. So beginning with her first claim that racial profiling dehumanizes minorities, I would like to disprove this by this claim by challenging her evidence. The point she tried to make was that media profits from dehumanizing minorities. However, the evidence she used was an over-dramatized film, which was the film Get Out, which is not very representative of real-life situations. The reasoning for this claim is also an issue. First, Esmerelda mentions how big cases, such as Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown's case, became controversial and therefore very showcased, which allowed media to profit. However, she followed up stating that they failed to include other cases. So in that sense, this is a contradiction because the media could have easily made any other case controversial and profited from that. Still, in terms about this first claim, because she used these two specific cases of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown, the point is made merely on availability heuristic, which is when one judges by how quickly and easily examples come to mind instead of examining all other alternatives. Other than this evidence, she offered an example on traffic stops of the state of Illinois to prove that minorities are stopped more than whites. However, this is a faulty or hasty generalization because this specific state has had these issues of racial profiling to another level than any other state, that they had to add an additional bill to be passed to ensure it was not practiced, the racial profiling. Since then, the Illinois State Police data show that the random stops of Black motorists have decreased since the law's inception. In her secondary claim on how racial profiling has a negative impact on the youth, she makes the argument that minorities are at loss of education, have negative psychological impacts, and that their actions are altered as a cause of change in behavior. She states this change in behavior is due to racial profiling. I would like to offer a reasoning and counterclaim challenge to this. She supports this claim with very little evidence, mostly just stating that, quote unquote, students will feel like they won't make it if they were to get in an argument with a white person at school because then they would be automatically been at fault, which makes them give up. There is no case study or statement for an accredited source on this inference. On the other hand, poverty, which is affecting these families, these communities, Black or minorities communities, is the actual driver behind school dropout rates. According to the Department of Education, students who do not attend college or who drop out quickly are predominantly persons from low-income families living in underdeveloped areas within major cities or in sparsely populated rural areas, and who have attended ineffective elementary and secondary schools. A study conducted by the American Community Survey in the years 2008 through 2012 determined that 1/3 of 563 teenage dropouts in the year were all cause of the students dropping out to work. That was their cause. 1/3 of them were dropping out to work because their families were in low-income families and they needed the extra money. And these were of ages 16 through 18, which leads me to April's last claim that racial profiling causes minorities distrust in the system. The reasoning she uses to ground this is that the officers selectively focus on one's race, but that is not the procedure of law enforcement, or at least all of law enforcement. Instead, they practice criminal profiling, which is based on characteristics they believe to be associated with crime. Also, she mentions how individuals are physically marked, like being strip searched. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that officers may strip search, that they obviously find nothing wrong if they are allowed to strip search no matter how minor the offenses or even if they do not suspect the individual has contraband. This is before admitting them to jail. She neglects to consider police procedural and protocol when making these judgments, and in the word distrust there's a lot of ambiguity, and it made me consider fallacious reasoning of her part. Thank you.
All right, well, you identified the claim and the secondary points pretty well, although it does seem like you're accepting the premise before you even begin the argument. I'd be a little bit careful about that. You then go to the first point and suggest that there are some issues here. You challenge the lack of evidence, which I think is reasonable. You suggest that the example that they point out is over-dramatized and they shouldn't be relying on that. The two individual cases, you suggest that they are not reasonable to use. You use the availability heuristic as an illustration of why that's the case. I think it would be helpful if you could present some counterexamples or some statistical information that suggests, for instance, the frequency with which people who don't fit into a racial category that has been identified as being profiled still get arrested and prosecuted for crimes. It shouldn't be hard to find some data on this to diminish this generalization that the advocate's making there. The Illinois argument, you basically suggest that they're a unique situation, that we shouldn't be reasoning from that experience, and in fact, that experience has been corrected by presenting data that since the law has gone into place, there's been a substantial decrease in that. So in essence, you might have said, at one time it might have been true in Illinois, but it's not true in Illinois anymore, and there isn't any other evidence that suggests that this is true. I think that's probably the way you want to summarize that argument. On the education argument, you basically are suggesting that there isn't really any evidence that links it to profiling kinds of issues, that the advocate asserted a whole bunch of links about how students might feel, and you basically develop a good counterclaim suggesting here that poverty is the real source of problems for these folks. And I liked the statistic that you had that suggested that a third of students in some of these areas drop out primarily to be able to work, which doesn't seem to have anything to do with racial profiling and has everything to do with their economic status. And then on the distrust in the system argument, I think you suggest that there's really criminal profiling, which is different than racial profiling, although you don't go into much detail about what that is. And then you kind of defend the idea of strip searching under a lot of circumstances. I don't know that gets you very far, and in fact, it might really suggest that there is a problem that's going on there. So I thought that was perhaps the weakest response that you had. Everything else, except for that beginning part where you say, well, yeah, they make a strong argument, and this seems to be true. I wouldn't say that. I just make the arguments that you're making, and I think that you've got good arguments on the first 2 points, and the third one you need to maybe develop a little bit more. All right, thank you.